Alrighty. All right, so we need the PowerPoint up.
Sorry. Okay, let me get
And
it.
hopefully, I would love for you to have the notes in front of you. Yeah, go to the second one. I forgot to change the date on that too, but anyway. So the question is, what do you remember about the framers of the Arizona Constitution? We discussed this in the last time we met. So does anybody remember anything about them at all?
I know we talked about them, but it was a month ago almost.
I know that.
And my brain's got fried since then, so.
I wasn't there, so.
The bulk of them are dead now.
Well, they are dead. That would be true. So what we said is that they were what would be classified as progressives at that time. They were fairly anti-establishment. They were not too excited about Taft, who was the president at the time. And so they, the first constitution that they submitted for acceptance was not accepted because they were too far radical in their preparation of the Constitution. So Taft sent it back to them and said, do it again. And so they did. And they sent him the second one. And he had one objection, and that was recall of judges. He didn't like that at all. He thought that would make the judiciary unstable. And so he sent it back to them and he said, fix that or we won't ratify it. So they took it out and sent it back to him, and it was ratified. And then that was it. It was ratified. We became a state on what's Valentine's Day? February 14th. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So February 14th and 1912, I think. And so that very same year was an election year. And in the end, they put it back in as a constitutional amendment in November. So, so anyway, we had some questions on what we've read so far on initiatives and referendums. And I really haven't had time to find out the answers, but in this section here, we're going to be talking about the amendment that was discussed at the end of session 1. So at the end of session 1, we talked about, hang on. We talked about the powers of the initiative and the referendum are hereby further reserved to the qualified electors in every incorporated city, town, and counties. And under the power of the initiative, 10% of the electors may propose an initiative or a referendum. That was basically where we were. So we're going to go on because we have a lot to cover. So, Rima, you want to read this one? It's on 2 slides.
Form and contents of initiative and of referendum petitions verification. Every initiative or referendum petition shall be addressed to the Secretary of State in the case of petitions for or on state measures, or to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, city clerk, or corresponding officer in the case of petitions for or on county, city, or town measures. And shall contain the declaration of each petitioner for himself that he is a qualified elector of the state, and in the case of petitions for or on city, town, or county measures of the city, town, or county affected, his post office address, the street and number, if any, of his residence, and the date on which he signed such petition.
Okay, go on to the next slide. Keep going.
Each sheet containing petitioner's signature shall be attached to a full and correct copy of the title and text of the measure so proposed to be initiated or referred to the people. And every sheet of such petition containing signature shall be verified by the affidavit of the person who circulated said sheet or petition, setting forth that each of the names on said sheet was signed in the presence of the affiant, and that in the belief of the affiant, each signer was a qualified elector of the state, or in the case of a city, town, or county measure, of the city, town, or county affected by the measure so proposed to be initiated or referred to the people. A
Okay,
passport from Azerbaijan shall be accepted as identification.
okay. So this is important because I'm trying to remember what it was that people turned in. And I can't remember now whether it was related to the canvassing that was happening after the 2020 election. I think that's what it was. The format wasn't done right. The affidavit on the back of it wasn't done right. And so the results were rejected. So they're just laying out what's required for every page that somebody signs their name on. That page has to have an affidavit done on the back of it. So do you remember, Rose? Because there was some deal about it hadn't been done right.
I thought that that was in the case of recalling Bauer and
Maybe.
Boyer, because they were going after them for not wanting to help with things, and they had done, I know they had done it and they had gotten the correct amount of signatures from what I remember, but the backs were not notarized and filled out so properly, and so
They were
that
thrown out
they
then.
rejected them for a recall. But the there was a lot of things that happened on the election, and I don't recall all of the things that happened. I know they started canvassing and Liz Harris started, doing that. But in the meantime, then the boys decided to, go the route of the affidavit to get the,
Right. I think you're right about the Rusty Bowers and Paul Boyer one. I think that was what it was, that they had done the recall, they'd gotten the signatures, but they didn't follow the constitutional requirements for the
Well-
verified affidavit on the back.
right. And part of it too was that they were not told, because they did say to them, you never said what was required. And so they didn't have like all the information. And I know that they were quite upset because of that.
Right, right. So this is just one of these things to know out of the Constitution. Any comments on anything else related to this one? Okay, then let's go on to the next one. And Iva, do you want to read, hon?
Sure. Official ballot. When any initiative or referendum, petition, or any measure referred to the people by the legislature shall be filed in accordance with this section with the Secretary of State. He shall cause to be printed on the official ballot and the next regular general election, the title and number of said measure, together with the words yes and no in such manner that the electors may express at the polls their approval or disapproval of the measure.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. It was interesting when I was poll observing that the number of people who marked both yes and no on at least one of the props.
Hmm. Do you think that that was because maybe they were too close to each other?
I don't know. Go ahead, Rima.
Silly me, looking at this, I don't see anything that allows the use of an electronic voting system.
Oh, it does not.
It says printed on the official ballot.
Right, right. Well, and there wasn't a ballot. There were ballots that people completed, but then they put them into the machines,
The tabulator,
the tabulators.
read it and collect the count of who voted for whom.
Yeah, if that didn't get changed,
Hmm.
right? So anyway, this was something I observed several times, that people put their ballot into the tabulator and it would kick it back out and it would say it was filled in too many times. And so then the poll worker would look at the ballot and they would say, here, look, you filled in yes and no on the ballot. And so they said, you can choose to just not have that be voted on, and we can press the green button. I can't remember what the green button was. And everybody decided to do that because they'd made a mistake on it. They didn't want to do it over again.
Well, then that means that that one was removed from the count, and their choice of that one was blank.
Right, right. So anyway. Okay, let's go on to the
Removed
next.
from the count, wait, please clarify, Rose, removed from the count of any
So
voter
well,
issue or just that particular
just that
item?
particular item, they didn't count it either way. So they didn't get a yes or a no on that one. It was
It was
like
as if they never filled it in at
Yeah,
all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. And Lisa, can you read this slide, please?
I can. Let me move the picture here so I can see the whole thing. Publication of measures. The text of all measures to be submitted shall be published as proposed amendments to the Constitution are published. And in submitting such measures and proposed amendments, the Secretary of State and all other officers shall be guided by the general law until legislation shall be expressly provided therefore. Conflicting measures or constitutional amendments. If two or more conflicting measures or amendments to the Constitution shall be approved by the people at the same election, the measure or amendment receiving the greatest number of affirmative votes shall prevail in all particulars as to which there is conflict.
Okay,
I don't think
So-
that's ever happened before.
pardon me?
The conflicting measures or constitutional amendments, has that ever happened?
Apparently it has.
Oh,
There
Mm.
was some information that it has. And one of the measures that was on the ballot this time, one of the props was worded that the legislature could require some different wording to clarify things. If people put in a prop or, an initiative or referendum that was not worded carefully enough, the legislature could amend the proposition.
okay.
That was one of the propositions that was on the ballot this time.
Mhm.
Oh, so if it passed, then that means that if they didn't like the wording, that they could change
Right.
it even without having to go back through the people again? So-
If I'm remembering correctly, that's what it said. I'm not 100% sure. I would have to go back and look at all those props again, but I'm pretty positive that that's what one of them said for on this ballot.
No, because I mean, that is totally unfair because the people voted on it in the verbiage that it was written. How does the legislature get to go back and change something to, make it something completely different than what the people voted on? If they
I know.
voted
I'm
yes,
just
then
telling you, it was on there this time. I remember it. So
I hope that didn't pass.
one of the things, the problem that I see with this is that people don't read the actual propositions. They just read the summaries that people send out, that like the voting people send out, and they don't really understand the propositions.
Well, some of the way they're worded makes it difficult as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think they try and do that stuff on purpose too.
It may be, it may be that that's true. I don't know. So at any rate, apparently this conflicting measures one has happened previously.
Okay.
So, it's possible, you get two different groups who feel strongly about two different things, the same thing, two different ways, and they get their signatures, then it gets on the ballot.
Mhm.
So it's not impossible. Okay, so number 13 is going to be an interesting one. So let's see. Rima, you want to read that one again?
Yes. Canvass of votes.
Okay.
Proclamation.
You're not on.
Canvass of votes proclamation. It shall be the duty of the Secretary of State, in the presence of the governor and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to canvass the votes for and against each such measure or proposed amendment to the Constitution within 30 days after the election. And upon the completion of the canvass, the governor shall forthwith issue a proclamation, giving the whole number of votes cast for and against each measure or proposed amendment, and declaring such measures or amendments as are approved by a majority of those voting thereon to be law.
Okay, so I'm going to read you some definitions because we need to know the definitions of things. So hang on, let me find where I'm looking. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is right out of Black's Law. And this is what canvass means in Black's Law. So let's look at what it says here. The completion of the canvass, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so pay attention to what the definition says. The act of examining and counting the returns of votes cast at a public election to determine authenticity, personal solicitation of votes or survey to determine probable vote outcome. So does that fit with what's here? Let's read it again. Just that section, Rima, where it says after the election.
After the election, and upon the completion of the canvass, the governor shall forthwith issue a proclamation, giving the whole number of votes cast for and against each measure or proposed amendment, and declaring such measures or amendments as are approved by a majority of those voting thereupon to be law.
Right, and up above, I should have had you go higher, but that's okay. Up above, it says, in the presence of the governor and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to canvass the votes for and against each measure or proposed amendment. And let me go back and read canvass again. The act of examining and counting the returns of votes cast at a public election to determine authenticity.
Well, the thing that gets me here is that they're talking about amendments and proclamations. They're not talking about voting of people or legislature. They're talking about, like the props.
I know, but we're in the prop section.
Right. So
Okay, so we're in the prop section, so that's why it doesn't say
Gotcha.
people. We're in the prop section.
okay, so they're only
still-
supposed to go back and check to make sure that they have the proper amounts of yeses or nos for each proposition.
So are they using the word canvass the votes here in a proper way?
No,
No.
because when you canvass, don't you walk to a person's house and ask them?
Well, that's another way of, that's another use of canvassing, but that's not the dictionary, the law dictionary definition at all. Do you see there's a problem here?
Yeah.
Because the definition says to determine authenticity. Now it says in the next sentence, personal solicitation of votes or survey to determine probable vote outcome, but that's not what it says here. It's saying to canvass the votes for and against each measure or proposed amendment within 30 days, which is another interesting point we'll make in a minute, after the election and upon the completion of the canvass for and against, the governor shall make the announcement. That is not what the dictionary says is the definition of canvass, is it?
No.
So in the very Constitution, which I'm quite positive that this was a legislative thing that was passed originally to be in there. They were supposed to pass laws about these things, and to add things to it, as part of the Constitution. So the word canvas needs to be changed. It's not the right word.
What word would you put in there?
So it's the duty of the Secretary of State in the presence of the governor and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to examine the authenticity of the votes. That's what canvass means, to examine.
You would be back to canvas. If that's what you want them to do, you're just defining canvas and putting the definition in where it says
Well,
canvas.
except that is that what they mean here? I guess that's my point.
So
You're
what is
right.
authenticity means that it's been verified, like your signature verified, and that you're the one that actually voted. Is that what
Yes,
authenticity
yes.
means?
All of those pieces need to be in place.
So what I think this is suggesting, and I could be wrong because the language is imprecise, is that the Secretary of State, in the presence of these poobahs, has to certify the results of the
Election.
balloting
Yeah,
and say this is real, and we know that it was valid, or we're accepting it invalidly and saying it's valid, and these are authentic
so
votes.
let me read you, yes. So let me read you the definition of certify, because that would be probably the more appropriate word. Let me read you that definition. To authenticate or vouch for a thing in writing, to attest as being true or as represented.
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
Mhm.
So when they're saying the Secretary of State, the Governor, Chief Justice all get together, they're not canvassing, they're certifying.
Yeah.
It's a wrong word.
Mhm. And I think that's what threw off all the other counties is the verbiage and that they kept using in order, besides the fact that they were threatening them and forcing them to do something that they didn't want to
Right.
do.
So now the
Yeah.
other piece I want you to notice here that's extremely important is how many days it says.
30 days,
So what would be 30 days from November 8th
December 8th.
approximately? Because,
Yeah, the 7th, maybe if you don't
right,
do the,
You could make the argument that it's business days. You could do that. So it
Yeah.
might be the 15th.
but
it could
December.
be.
also
the
too, isn't
17th.
it supposed to be 30 days after they get done counting?
So let's see what it says. To canvass the votes for and against each measure to propose or proposed amendment to the Constitution within 30 days after the election and the completion of the canvass, the governor shall forthwith issue a proclamation. So they're saying to get their proclamation out. I think it's saying within 30 days. What do you think?
Sounds
But it
like it
says
to me.
after they do the canvas too, so how long does the canvas take?
Well, I'm thinking that they're saying it shouldn't take more than 30 days. Maybe I'm wrong. So here we are with Hobbs saying that they better certify or they're going to jail
Mm-hmm.
and that they're past due on the certification date. Is that true?
Well, now you have to take into consideration how many days did it take them? Almost 2 weeks to come up with the numbers. So how can anything be certified and be thrown into 30 days if you're still going to take 2 weeks after the 8th in order to give anybody the correct numbers?
Well,
So wouldn't it be 30 days from the correct numbers so that they had ample
Well, that
time
would
to
make it
look at
even later,
everything?
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the fact of the matter is that 100 years ago, around
It
that.
didn't take them 3
It
weeks
didn't
to
take
count
them
votes.
2 weeks because they
No.
weren't using stupid machines. You know. So, but do you see the point here that I'm making?
Mhm.
That even if it is 30 days from the date of voting, what they're saying to these people is unconstitutional.
Yeah, they're not giving them the amount of 30 days. They're
Right.
forcing them to do it with less time.
Right.
Can
So
I
what's,
ask,
I was just gonna say, so couldn't they have, well, maybe the mayor, like, I'm thinking of Mojave County supervisor, so I'm taking it they didn't know the Constitution.
They don't.
No,
And so, and therefore maybe Cochise does, because, or why, I guess that's my question too, is why did they go after Mojave, or Hobbs, I should say, go after Mojave like she did, but not Cochise? I mean, I know she's
She
killing them.
went after Cochise as well. She did.
yeah, she wrote them a
they-
letter and we have the letter.
She's threatened them just as much as she did Mojave. It's Cochise just decided they were going to stand up against the dragon. And I was listening to a video that Daniel Wood put out. Daniel Wood was helping them. And he said that the lawyer's fees for Cochise are a non-issue. That somebody, and he didn't say who, was going to be footing the bill for all of the lawyers' fees for Cochise.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
And so it became a non-issue to them. So now they're not afraid to stand up. I mean, that's the issue. That's the issue in a nutshell, is who's going to pay my lawyers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she doesn't have the right to sue them anyways. She's
No.
actually, the threat by itself of what she's done nullifies the election as it is, because you cannot force somebody to give a vote that they freely cannot give in their own conscience. You can't demand that from anybody.
Well, and that's the Mojave guy saying that he was on record,
Mhm.
on video, that he was voting under duress
Mhm.
was stellar, because it's public record that he's voting under duress, which duress nullifies the vote.
Yep.
Where is that stated? Just curious.
It's in the maxims, Lisa.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Rima.
Do you define after the election? What defines the end of the election?
And that's a good question. And so I don't know if it's that day. I don't know. This is not specific enough, is it?
No, no.
Well,
We
if it's
see-
gonna be after that day, then all the votes, it needs to stay in there. All the votes need to be counted too.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and if
And all
they
the-
close it at 7 o'clock, and that's the last time you can vote unless you are in line. So even if it's 8 and it's closed, then that means that everything should be in on that day, and you can't accept anything past or beyond that day. So we all know that by taking the extra time, they were seeing exactly how many they needed to forge so that they could actually, put in the accurate amount,
Mhm. Mhm.
Well,
to
plus,
change the vote.
plus at the time
a
of the
problem with that?
Constitution, they were not using mail-in ballots
Just a
either.
little.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they had
Well,
already
this-
been, I'm sorry, Iva, go ahead.
Kimberly Yee, how much she won by, that it doesn't make it, anybody that has common sense knows that that
Right.
does not make sense.
No, and here, her and the mine inspector.
Yeah.
The mine inspector got even more votes than
Than
Kimberly
Kimberly
Yee.
Yee.
And so what Jovan Huttenputzer was saying is that the people were told to vote a straight Republican ticket, which the Yee votes and the mine inspector votes show that that's what people did, because it's so far down ballot.
Mhm.
So at any rate, this is an interesting thing here that needs to be fixed
Yeah.
in the Constitution. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And Iva, you want to read?
Reservation of legislative power. This section shall not be construed to deprive the legislature of the right to enact any measure, except that the legislature shall not have the power to adopt any measure that supersedes, in whole or in part, an initiative measure approved by a majority of the votes cast thereon, or any referendum measure decided by a majority of the votes cast thereon, unless the superseding measure furthers the purposes of the initiative or referendum measure, and at least 3/4 of the members of each house of the legislature by a roll call of ayes and nays vote to supersede such initiative or referendum measure.
Okay, so what does that say to you? What do you see there?
But they can change it if they have at least 3/4 to
Right.
proceed each initiative or referendum. Now, we passed a referendum saying that anything passed by the voters could not be changed
Right.
by the legislature, which I have a problem with because, democracies commit suicide. And when we have too many of these referendums and outside money,
Right. Right.
Yeah, so would this then negate or provide a out for
Yes.
the legislature to be able to change the initiatives?
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, the problem is getting 3/4.
Yeah, because that's a super majority. And that's hard to get in a split legislature.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if that would ever happen, because I'm telling you, with the bills that we've moved through, the Democrats, they line up. they you can't, they vote as a block.
I know, I know.
So,
So, but there it is. I mean, it is possible.
yeah,
So if that passed, and this is the Constitution, the Constitution oversees the proposition that we passed or whatever, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so therefore, was it wrong for them to even have that proposition on there to be voted upon when it was in conflict with the Constitution? And it should have actually gone through the legislature to then be voted upon, the people to change the Constitution.
It seems like it. It was one of the props I just wasn't sure about how to vote on even.
Mhm.
well, it seems like if you voted yes, it would have been null and void anyway.
Yeah, it seems like it. So, okay. So let's go on here because I really want to talk about some other things here. So 15. Lisa, you want to read this one?
Yes, legislators' right to refer measure to the people. Nothing in this section shall be construed to deprive or limit the legislature of the right to order the submission to the people at the polls of any measure, item, section, or part of any measure. Self-executing this section of the Constitution shall be in all respects self-executing.
So self-executing, I'm going to give you that definition as well. So hang on, I gotta find it. Self-executing. Those requiring no, oh, wait a minute, it's the wrong thing. Self-executing constitutional provisions. Term has reference to provisions which are immediately effective without the necessity of ancillary legislation. Constitutional provision is self-executing if it supplies sufficient rule by which right given may be enjoyed or duty imposed, enforced. Constitutional provision is not self-executing when it merely indicates principles without laying down rules, giving them force of law. So they're saying that this is self-executing because it's detailed enough, according to them.
Okay. Even though we
Okay.
noticed that the canvas may be,
Say it again.
even though we noticed that the canvas, the way that was used may need to be changed.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And so we have amendment to Article 4, Part 1, Section 1, Subsection 6, ratified on November 3rd, 1998, Prop 105. And so the ballot measure amended Part 1 of Article 4 of the Arizona Constitution. Underlined text was added and struck through text was deleted. Okay, so now go to the next slide because I don't remember what it is, and let me see. Okay, so on your handout, I've given you a bunch of information that I did not put in the slides. So one of the things in your handout is that it shows a chart that Prop 105, the election date was November 3rd, 1998. The topic was direct democracy measure. And the status was that it was approved. And it's saying it's a constitutional amendment and the origin is the citizens. Also not on the slide, does it tell you the yes and no, but does everybody have the paper?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh,
It went off and I'm trying to get it back up.
Oh, okay. So the paper says a yes vote supported this constitutional amendment to prohibit the Arizona State Legislature from amending or repealing voter-approved ballot initiatives and referendums, thus requiring the legislature to place proposed changes on the ballot for voters to decide. Instead of letting the legislature amend it before it gets on the ballot, it has to go the way it comes. A no vote oppose this constitutional amendment, thus continuing to allow the Arizona legislature to amend or repeal voter-approved ballot initiatives and referendums. Okay. So, so the ballot measure applied to voter-approved ballot initiatives and referendums passed at the election November 3rd, 1998, and subsequent years. It was passed with a 52% to 48% ratio of yes to no's. But look at the number of votes. It was very close.
Mhm.
So the question that I put here is, what does that indicate about the support base for this amendment?
Not strong.
It was not strong, was it? There were almost as many people against it as there were for it. Really quite close. It was really very close. So, but it passed. All right. So in your paperwork on page 3 and 4, you can see what it says about legislative authority, initiative, and referendum. And on page 3, you don't see much of anything changed. But if you turn to page 4, you see what they did, what they're saying, what was crossed out and what was added in. So I didn't want to put this on slides, but I did want you to see it. So any thoughts about this at all?
So
Questions?
the red is what was taken out, and what was added was what's underlined. So
Right. The crossed out part was removed and the underlined part was added.
yeah, this is the initiative that I'm referring to.
Right.
So
So,
it still allows the 3/4 of the members of each house of the legislature by a roll call, ayes or nays to amend it,
yes,
at least.
yes. It's interesting, isn't it?
You know, I have to tell you, I talked with, at the time, his name was Senator Peterson. And he was talking with the budget, how really, people get really super upset about, oh, they're cutting this or cutting that. And he says, if we need to make changes, we do not have a lot of power over a significant part of the budget. Because it's like with, if they take federal monies, then there's dictates of a certain amount there. Then you have, these initiatives and referendums, and they can't make changes there. He told me at the time, it's like only like 20-30%. I
Right.
thought, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so
So you can, this continues on to page 5 and 6, where you can see the end of it, where they added some more verbiage into 14 and 15 as well.
mhm.
Numbers 14 and 15.
and see some of this initiative stuff, it's money.
Yeah.
A lot of it is money. And so therefore,
Well, and one of the things, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be, but I don't think so, in this election, one of the props said that the initiative or referendum must indicate where the money for funding whatever they were saying, that it must indicate where the money was coming from. for whatever they were proposing, which was an interesting thought as well. I mean, you would say, well, duh, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
So, okay. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay, let's go on to the next slide then. So we're now in section 2, which is penalty for violation of initiative and referendum provisions. And the legislature shall provide a penalty for any willful violation of any of the provisions of the preceding section. And so now that's all that says, is they're going to provide a penalty. All right. And now we're going on to the next slide, which is part 2 of the legislature. So now we've left initiatives and referendums behind. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we are now into part 2 of the legislature, section 1, which is Senate, House of Representative members, special session, congressional and legislative boundaries, and citizen commissions. And it is in this section that we shall find redistricting, which has been quite controversial. So I don't remember who read last. Iva, you want to read?
Sure. The Senate shall be composed of 1 member elected from each of the 30 legislative districts established pursuant to this section. The House of Representatives shall be composed of 2 members elected from each of the 30 legislative districts established pursuant to this section. Upon the presentation to the governor of a petition bearing the signatures of not less than 2/3 of the members of each house requesting a special session of the legislation and designating the date of convening, the governor shall promptly call a special session to assemble on the date specified at a special session, so called. The subjects which may be considered by the legislature shall not be limited.
Okay. So does anyone remember the last time there was a special session called?
Yep. It was for the audit.
Well, they're calling one now supposedly for the
For
Yep.
this one, yeah.
expenditure.
But the thing of it is that I think some of the people went around asking them if they would support coming back and doing another audit, and some of them are already saying no, that they will not.
Oh, really? Republicans or Democrats?
Republicans.
Well, they realize that if we don't get this election stuff figured out, that no Republican will be elected.
It's a mess.
Well, the thing of it is that whether their butt is on the line or it's not, that should not matter. That it should come down to having an election that people can count on and that they can feel safe about. And until the people feel safe about that, you're just going to have more problems on your hands. And this constant deal of just, oh, well, we'll just do it next time. We'll just do it next time is a bunch of crap. And it needs to be stopped and dealt with now, this time.
The reason is because history shows a very dismal future if we don't get this fixed.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And obviously they don't seem to care.
Yep. Okay. So let's go on. Rima, you want to read?
Yes. Part 2, the legislature, section 1, Senate. Oh, do you want me to read that whole title?
No,
No.
you just start with number 3,
3.
babe.
By February 28th of each year that ends in 1, an independent redistricting commission shall be established to provide for the redistricting of congressional and state legislative districts. The independent redistricting commission shall consist of 5 members. No more than 2 members of the independent redistricting commission shall be members of the same political party. Of the first 4 members appointed, No more than 2 shall reside in the same county. Each member shall be a registered Arizona voter who has been continuously registered with the same political party or registered as unaffiliated with a political party for 3 or more years immediately preceding appointment, who is committed to applying the provisions of this section in an honest, independent, and impartial fashion, and to upholding public confidence in the integrity of the redistricting process. Within the 3 years previous to the appointment, members shall not have been appointed to, elected to, or a candidate for any other public office, including precinct committeeman or committeewoman, but not including school board member or officer, and shall not have served as an officer of a political party or served as a registered paid lobbyist or as an officer of a candidate's campaign committee.
Okay, so here we have the formation of the redistricting commission. So questions, thoughts, surprises, anything?
My response as I read this was, yeah, right.
I
So we've
know,
got these clean, honest, unimpeachable, unimpaired, neutral persons who have been registered but have not been overly involved or active, or
right,
have only been acting behind the scenes or something.
right,
So these are saintly humans who will act without any regard to anybody else's agendas.
yes,
Uh-huh. Okay, I got a bridge I'd like to sell you.
I know, I know. Well, and
But what this doesn't say, and what I think indicates to me how nonsensical this is conflict of interests
Yeah.
shall be prohibited, and any conflict of interest determined through this or that process of adjudication shall result in the imposition of jail terms. I mean, that would help.
okay. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Anything else anybody notices?
They did that every year, isn't it like every
No,
10
no,
years now?
It's every 10 years. It's the census.
Okay,
So the census occurs every 10 years on the year that ends with 0. Okay. 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever. Okay.
okay,
This is the redistricting is starting or being done on the year that ends with 1.
okay,
Okay. Right after the census. Okay. And theoretically, it's done based on census information then.
gotcha.
And this might be a stupid question, but why do we have to have the redistricting? I mean, I get it. People are coming and going and moving in and moving out, and some areas might be, less populated and other areas might be more populated, but we all lived through this nightmare in which that they tore up everything and threw people in wherever they wanted to, and cut other people out because, like, to me, and Jody's here, and Patrick, hello Patrick, they cut Jody out of what would be my precinct and put her into another one. And I don't see the reasoning behind that. I figure if you make a district, you just make the district and you just leave the district alone. I mean, maybe I could be looking at it incorrectly, but
I don't know that you are. We know just here in Maricopa County that, so for instance, the District 3 is a classic example of this,
mhm.
LD3, where they have part of Scottsdale, part of Anthem. They're far apart from each other.
Mhm.
Part of Cave Creek, part of some other pieces of communities, part of Phoenix in there. And they're all supposed to work together and get along and make decisions together and be, kumbaya.
Well, it's kind of like Lisa and I both came from 15 before, and
Mhm.
15 was the largest one. And so now they just kind of rearranged it a little bit and made it 3.
Well, and then we have LD 25, which includes Sun City West and Sun City Grand up there, down the west side of the 303, all the way out to Yuma,
Yeah,
which it is 3 to 4 hours away
Mhm.
from Buckeye.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. How do you meet? And how do you find a,
don't. My understanding that district, they had like a one in Yuma previously, and then like one that met like in the Buckeye Avondale area.
Right.
That's not helpful.
No. And it's supposed to be done by population evenly, which is why it's why they did what they did with 25, taking it clear out to Yuma, because they didn't have the population. But it's just extremely illogical.
Well,
And
but-
it's very disruptive to the lives of the people who are in this. I mean, it's very disruptive.
well,
Mhm.
and then when you're talking about school districts, you have people that live in Peoria, but they're linked in with people that aren't in, going even into that school district. And you've got people for Deer Valley who their kids might go to Peoria, or they might go to, someplace else. And it just doesn't seem logical to me. I would think that if you're voting for your school boards and your people, they should be where your kids go. I mean, it shouldn't be, I live over here, but my kids go over here. You should be voting for the people where your kids are going. I know that's not going to be feasibly possible with people picking their own schools and going from one part of town to the other. But I mean, logistically, you would
Well,
think that-
the other thing that I see in here that's a problem is that it cannot be somebody who's a precinct committeeman or committee woman at all. But those are the people who actually know things.
well, they feel that they're going to be biased to having
Yeah, I guess so.
things
It's just
done their way.
interesting. It's a huge mess. I don't know if all states do the redistricting with the census. I don't know. But anyway, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, Rima just read. So Lisa, you want to read?
Yeah. Okay, I'll just start at number 4. The Commission on Appellate Court Appointments shall nominate candidates for appointment to the Independent Redistricting Commission, except that if a politically balanced commission exists whose members are nominated by the Commission on Appellate Court Appointment and whose regular duties relate to the elective process, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments may delegate to such existing commission hereinafter, after the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments designee the duty of nominating members for the Independent Redistricting Commission and all other duties assigned to the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments in this section. Number 5, by January 8th of years ending in 1, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments or its designee shall establish a pool of persons who are willing to serve on and are qualified for appointment to the Independent Redistricting Commission. The pool of candidates shall consist of 25 nominees, with 10 nominees from each of the 2 largest political parties in Arizona based on party registration, and 5 who are not registered with either of the 2 largest political parties in Arizona.
Okay, so what we see here is that the appellate court has control over this, right?
Mhm.
which is something that I didn't know at all.
So,
That doesn't happen, does it?
I don't know.
How do those people get appointed?
I
Lisa,
thought
do
it
you
was-
know?
I thought it was like the governor or I was through some independent, was it through the clean elections?
This is for the redistricting commission.
Yeah. I,
So I don't
Don't-
think the governor is supposed to participate in the picking.
I can't remember, but I don't think it's happening this way.
I don't know.
Maybe some investigation needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to dig into these things. I mean, it's part of the reason why we're doing this class is so we're aware of what's in here that we certainly were not aware of previously.
Right, right.
I just. The state requires the commissioners. Okay, but doesn't say who. Commissioners of the Independent Redistricting Commission. But it.
And so who is the people on the appellate court that are the in
Making the decisions.
yeah,
And what
don't
is
know.
what's the definition of an appellate court?
Hang on, I'll look it up. Hang on.
Maria, it kept kicking me out. That's why I left, because I mean, it just bounced me out. So I was trying to get back in and my phone wouldn't let me get back in. I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi.
really?
Yeah, it took me a while to get back.
Okay, an appellate court is a court having jurisdiction to appeal and review. A court to which causes are removable by appeal. Certiorari, error or report. A reviewing court. And except in special cases where original jurisdiction is conferred, not a trial court or court of first instance. Okay, so that's saying it's not a court of record is what they're saying then.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wonder who's a
Yeah.
part of our appellate court.
I don't know.
This here says the commission, this is a redistricting commission, was formed by the passage of Prop 106 by the people of Arizona in the 2000 general election. Prop 106 amends the Arizona Constitution to create a five-member commission to redraw congressional and legislative district boundaries following the 2000 census. Previously, the state legislature was responsible for redrawing the lines. That doesn't say that there. Many people believe this practice resulted in boundaries that served the politicians instead of the people of Arizona. The five-member redistricting commission acts independently of the state legislature.
And where are you reading from, Lisa?
It's the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, frequently asked questions.
Oh, okay, good. All right, well, let's go on to the next slide. Who else would like to read? I don't know who else is in here. I can't see on my screen.
Patrick, do you want to read or no?
Not right now. if that's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
no
Okay,
problem.
thanks.
all right. So are we back to Rima? Or are we at
Appointments.
IBA? I don't remember.
I'll go. Appointments to the Independent Redistricting Commission shall be made in the order set forth below. No later than January 31st of years ending in 1, the highest ranking officer elected by the Arizona House of Representatives shall make one appointment to the Independent Redistricting Commission from the pool of nominees, followed by one appointment from the pool made in turn by each of the following: the majority party leader of the Arizona House of Representatives, the highest ranking officer elected by the Arizona Senate, and the minority party leader of the Arizona Senate. Each such official shall have a 7-day period in which to make an appointment. Any official who fails to make an appointment within the specified time period will forfeit the appointment privilege. In the event that there are 2 or more minority parties within the House or the Senate, the leader of the largest minority party by statewide party registration shall make the appointment.
So they're each picking one.
But it comes from the pool, so there is the legislature, but there's a pool of, but again, I haven't
Right.
heard of the pool,
Right.
so,
Interesting.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Give me 1 second. I wanted to paste this. And this is what it said.
I have a question before we
Sure.
move on.
Sure.
Um, how does that qualify as an independent commission? I'm
I
sorry,
don't
I'm
have a
not,
clue how it qualifies as independent when,
right.
you know, I mean, really,
What?
I know, I know.
Well, it said here that 16 judges come from Phoenix and 2 and then 6 judges come from Tucson.
From the for the appellate court.
Mhm. The Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
That's it for for the entire state?
Apparently,
That's what I mean.
Okay.
I just found you know, I was looking as you guys were talking, so I was trying to find some more information that might. I don't know which judges. I haven't found that yet, but okay. We'll
it
move
certainly
on.
doesn't sound, you know, independent and not influenced. You know?
Yeah, just what we need, more judges.
I know. All right, Rima, you want to read 7 and 8 here? Well, it's actually 7, 8, and 9.
Any vacancy in the above 4 allegedly independent redistricting commission positions remaining as of March 1st of a year ending in 1 shall be filled from the pool of nominees by the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments or its designee. The appointing body shall strive for political balance and fairness.
Uh-huh.
8. At a meeting called by the Secretary of State, 4 independent redistricting commission members shall select by majority vote from the nomination pool a 5th member. So stupid. Sorry. A 5th member who shall not be registered with any party already represented on the independent redistricting commission and who shall serve as chair. If the 4 commissioners fail to appoint a 5th member within 15 days, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments or its designee, striving for political fairness, shall appoint a 5th member from the nomination pool who shall serve as chair. 9. The 5 commissioners shall then select by majority vote one of their members to serve as vice chair.
Okay.
It looks like Ducey appointed Jennifer M. Perkins, and Judge James B. Morris for the appeals court division.
So that would make them just very, you know, nonpartisan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rhinos.
And I'm just saying this independent chairperson, supposed to be not with either party. How, anyway, how do you determine that person is truly independent? Did they just change their party affiliation to independent so they can be on
Yep.
the?
Yeah, or
I
libertarian.
think there was, didn't they say that they had to be not affiliated with the party, either party for 3 years prior?
Right, right. Yeah, that's what they said.
And here are the judges and their names
Okay.
in the chat.
All right. Well, there we go.
I want to thank you for offering me the opportunity for a good chuckle. I needed one.
You're quite welcome anytime, anytime. So this is all extremely interesting. Let's go to the next slide.
Oh, let me see. Is this the right one? No, that
Uh,
one.
No, we're on, yeah, number 10. There we go.
Okay.
So, Lisa, you want to read?
After having been served written notice and provide with an opportunity for a response, a member of the Independent Redistricting Commission may be removed by the governor with the concurrence of 2/3 of the Senate for substantial neglect of duty, gross misconduct in office, or inability to discharge the duties of office. If a commissioner or chair does not complete the term of office for any reason, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments or its designee shall nominate a pool of 3 candidates within the first 30 days after the vacancy occurs. The nominee shall be of the same political party or status as was the member who vacated the office at the time of his or her appointment. And the appointment other than the chair shall be made by the current holder of the office designated to make the original appointment. The appointment of a new chair shall be made by the remaining commissioners. If the appointment of a replacement commissioner or chair is not made within 14 days following the presentation of the nominees, the Commission on Appellate Court Appointments or its designee shall make the appointment. Striving for political balance and fairness, the newly appointed commissioner shall serve out the remainder of the original term. 3 commissioners, including the chair or vice chair, constitute a quorum. 3 or more affirmative votes as are required for any official action. Where a quorum is present, the Independent Redistricting Commission shall conduct business in meetings open to the public with 48 or more hours public notice provided.
So that, I read that about open to the public and I thought, really? Because it didn't seem like it was.
Well, they allowed the people to go and give their their thoughts or their yays or nays about the decisions that had been made. But while I was there watching this whole entire process, being my very first time of seeing all of this, I did not feel that they took the people's grievance to what was going on to heart.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, because like there was people that they were taking from Prescott and throwing them in with Flagstaff or something like that, and they were like, we're 2 different areas, we should not be lumped in as one, because it just doesn't make sense. It's kind of like Sun City and Sun City Grand or whatever, Sun City West being lumped in with people down in Yuma. What do they have in common? What is their or Goodyear or whatever being lumped in with Yuma? You're talking about 2 different areas. There's different things going on. How can anybody say that they can benefit the whole of that particular group?
Right.
I would think, people in Yuma would have their own and people in Tucson would have their own. And, I mean,
Well, I
Well,
know
when you said it was based on population,
it's a
would-
problem because we have the highest population in the entire state is Maricopa County.
Yep.
Exactly.
The next highest is Tucson, and the next highest, the third highest is Flagstaff.
Mhm.
Okay. Flagstaff and Prescott are about the same,
mhm.
and actually probably Prescott is more than Flagstaff if you include Prescott Valley. And so, and then the rest of the state, to one extent or another, is somewhatly rural. And so the population centers are the problem.
Mhm. I
So,
remember now they were actually going to divide Sedona in half. And half of it would go with Prescott and half of it would go with Flagstaff.
And that's what I'm talking about, like little towns like Snowflake, Taylor,
Strawberry.
places like that,
Yeah.
Cottonwood.
Yeah.
yeah, Rima.
As I understand what we've read tonight, it says on the basis of population. Nowhere does it say on the basis of equalized population.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
why is that being allowed to happen?
Well, I don't even know. It's, I mean, this would be the biggest reason why we're doing this class and reading this stuff, is so we actually know some things that are done, and understand it, because this was just done and it created chaos within the entire state.
Mhm.
And something needs to be adjusted before the next chaos occurs
Hmm.
in 10 years.
So when this kind of chaos is introduced politically, I always like to ask cui bono, who benefits?
Mhm.
Who got most of what they wanted? Who got the most benefit out of this
Yeah.
chaos?
And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, because it affects both parties, right? Because the split's the same for the
Yes.
Democrats as it is for the Republicans.
Right. And they were supposed to take that into consideration as well. That was supposed to be part
Yeah,
of
there
it.
was supposed to be equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats, or as close to that as possible, registered voters, in each one, so that not one party over another was given a advantage.
Yeah, like, because especially when you're electing officials from your district and your congressional district and your legislative district and your precinct.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is why was that taken into consideration Republican versus Democrat elector, people that register voters? Because it should be, again, more about the community and what the community needs. And so if that happens to be a highly Republican area, then that's what that community desires and wants. I'm looking at it more, and maybe that's why they were split in, Prescott and Sedona, because Sedona is more liberal and Prescott's more Republican. But
Yeah, it was probably to even it out.
yeah, but the thing is, it should be according to what the different communities need, and they need to feel like they're represented. Like the ones in Yuma, I don't think they probably feel super represented, because their legislators, many of them, I know last time with that district, I think none of them lived in Yuma.
Right. Right.
So that's, to me, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, we've got one more slide. So, Lisa, you want to read?
a commissioner during the commissioner's term of office and for 3 years thereafter shall be ineligible for Arizona public office or for registration as a paid lobbyist. The Independent Redistricting Commission shall establish congressional and legislative districts. The commencement of the mapping process for both the congressional and legislative districts shall be the creation of districts of equal population in a grid-like pattern across the state. Whoa, we don't do that.
No.
No,
No.
far from it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, adjustments to the grid shall then be made as necessary to accommodate the goals as set forth below. Districts shall comply with the United States Constitution, the United States Voting Rights Act. Congressional districts shall have equal population to the extent practical, and state legislative districts shall have equal population to the extent practical. So that's mainly it, equal population. Districts shall be geographically compact and contiguous to the extent practical. Yeah, okay, yep, that's what I was saying. District boundaries shall respect communities of interest to the extent practical. Again,
I don't think they're following these rules.
to the extent practical, district lines shall use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tracts. I mean, that was a big thing. Gilbert, I think, was split up like 4 different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're like, wait, why are you guys doing this? To the
Mhm.
extent practical, competitive districts should be favored where to do so would create no significant detriment to the other goals.
Yeah, I don't think they followed these rules at all.
Nope. I don't think so either.
Yeah,
I think they broke every single one of them, to tell you the truth. I mean, seriously, if you're really gonna.
Well, and maybe it's because of Rima's, thought about the fact that, they weren't just this super squeaky clean people that, they're supposed to be. You know?
What is a
Well, and-
competitive
and-
district?
Yeah.
What?
What is a competitive district?
I don't know.
They have different volleyball teams?
I
know
don't
what that
know
means.
what a
I
competitive
think
district is.
competitive, it doesn't explain here, and it would be nice to have a definition, but my guess would be competitive in that it's not just like super Republican or super Democrat, that,
I'm looking it up and see if we have a definition.
Okay.
so that's my, that's
You
my
may be
thoughts.
right.
And so, but again, should be favored where to do so, which would create no significant detriment to the other goals. So, yeah, you want to favor that, but if it's detrimental to these other goals, then it shouldn't be done.
Well, and they were doing those hearings at the end about about the special, the communities of interest and so forth, but they didn't listen.
Mhm.
Well, no, because Sedona was like, why are you splitting us in half?
Mhm.
And how is that fair? To split a town saying, okay, if you live on this side of the road, you're going to be in this one. And if you live on that side of the road, you're going to be in another one.
Yeah, and that's what happened in Gilbert.
Yeah.
What happened in
Well, that's
Scottsdale.
what I'm saying, they're chopping things up and putting people, going back to the, part about Jody. Peoria was chopped up and some parts, went in 29, some went in 27, some went in 28. Why are you chopping up a section of town?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. In order to bring in all of the regulations and restrictions and constrictions of Agenda 21, now Agenda 2030, communities that act together against them at their local level and at the next level up and the next level have been making trouble for the people who want to control every single aspect of what we can and cannot do, what we can and cannot own, how communities are arranged, how streets are organized, and so on. And it occurs to me that the more you can break a community into fragmented pieces, the easier it is to control the community meetings and the community regulations. This strikes me as very, very, very strong strong fragmentation activity in order to bring in all the Agenda 2030 regulations. That
Very
makes sense to
possible.
me.
Very possible.
Well, that's what COVID was, the lockdowns and not in social distancing and all this, that was all to kind of break
All
people.
part of the same thing.
Mhm.
Point.
Yeah.
You might, this is a commercial, you might want to go to preventgenocide2030.org and take the actions there and see what we're posting and get involved there if you have
Right.
time.
Oh,
Right.
is that an actual website?
Yeah.
What is that?
Preventgenocide2030.org. It's my website.
So is that about,
Preventing genocide. Anytime you hear agenda as in Agenda 2030, you need to hear genocide as in Genocide 2030. So it's about that. And there are various actions that you can take for things happening here in the US and in other countries. And you can propose your own actions on any issue that's important to you. So it's a dynamic site.
It's a
Give
good
that one
site.
more time, Rima.
Prevent genocide
Mhm.
2030 2030.org.
.org. Okay. Okay.
All right, that's it for tonight, guys. So this was interesting, wasn't it?
Yes,
Mhm.
very.
yeah,
We're-
And we'll just continue to dig into the Constitution and see what else we can find that's controversial.
Well, I do think that, going forward in the next census crap, that we should be educating the people in this part that we read in the stipulations of, not, the graphical, geographical parts and stuff like that, so that more people can have a better argument maybe than what they did this last time, because what Rima said, we all know is definitely the agenda of which they would like to achieve.
Right.
And, knowing these things and how they're trying to manipulate and break things up, and weaken strong communities would be very beneficial to get out there in all of the LDs, as well as just to the people in general.
Right. Well, and
Yes.
on Monday night, we were at a meeting in Anthem. And you could cut the tension with a knife,
Yeah.
because all these different people from all these different communities, well, the people who were wanting to be the LD chairman, that they
board.
wanted to be the board,
Mhm.
were there, to sort of campaign for themselves, which was fine. But then the people who were standing up and asking them questions were like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to bring all these different diverse groups together who are really angry with each other?
Mhm.
And that's exactly what Rima is pointing out, is they've fragmented, and they're wanting to get their own way instead of pulling together, which is the only thing that's going to work, is if they will pull together. It's a mess. It's a big mess.
And Lisa, this was district LD3 that was there and being asked this, because like I just got done saying, 15 was the largest one before, and they made it 3, and they've got all these different people where they've got tons of rhinos, and they've got tons of MAGA, and they got all these people, and yet they can't come together. They just all they do is fight and argue. They can't say, let's come together as one so that we can actually get something achieved, versus constantly arguing and bickering about every single thing that either side wants to do or try to achieve.
Well, and apparently my perception coming in as a, relative newcomer into this whole political realm, is that the Rhino group has been, the McCainites, that group,
Mhm.
have been so accustomed to getting their own way.
Yeah.
That the thought of compromising or hearing even somebody else speak from a different point of view is just almost impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when they're like, I've been here 30 years and you just come in and
Right. So it's a bunch of turf war. It's a bunch of a mess.
Well, we saw that with the primary election, actually, with the governor's race. And that was the battle.
Right.
In the Rhino.
Well, yeah.
And I said to Rose after that meeting, or maybe I said it to Tracy, I don't remember. I said, I think they did that on purpose
Mhm.
with LD3. I think they did it on purpose to
Yep.
create the mess, which is exactly what Rima's saying.
Mhm.
People say, oh, I like this redistricting, and I don't think you were particularly independent. And I also don't think, I mean, here are your conflicts of interest, right?
Right.
And I also don't think that you followed the requirements. It says wherever practical, and you didn't do that wherever practical. So we need to cancel your decisions as the redistricting commission and redo it, because you have violated the constitutional requirements placed upon you. It's sort of a violation of your oath of office and malfeasance and all that stuff.
Mhm.
That
Sounds good
seems
to
like
me.
that seems like a reasonable approach to me.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all.
There's this group called the Affidavit Mamas. Do you know them?
They
are
we're familiar.
fabulous.
We're familiar with them.
Yeah, we're I guess that's another one of the things that's on our list now.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, right? It was funny. I had this client for a really long time before, and I had been seeing her around at different events, and we never really talked about politics when I was working on her. And she actually came into one of the chats, and she was asking questions about, well, where are the affidavits going to be?
Are
and
you
different
still
things like-
recording, Rose?
Oh,